in the plastic industry, promoting circular economy. Yeah, and they're originally from Shropshire and from a rural background, so that's sort of where my passion lies. Thank you.
Hi everyone, Fabiola Franca here from Blueverse. We are an advisor and investor in technology and deep tech startup, mostly early stage. We look primarily in the UK, Europe, but increasingly into Asia and the Middle East, most likely UAE. I am French, based mostly in London.
Hi, I'm Kwaku Akom-Mensah. I'm the commercial director at Grantry. We're a government funding specialist that's been operating in the UK for about 15 years. In that time, we've delivered about £500 million worth of government funding through grants, R&D tax relief, and also government lending to UK and EU startups. I do most of my work either with clients directly or through our partner network of VCs, angel networks, accelerator programs, and research institutions. So anything government funding and non-dilutive funding, that's really where I focus. Looking forward to the chat.
Hi everyone, I'm Richard Christina. I'm the Principal Director of Founder Institute. We're the world's biggest early stage pre-seed accelerator program. Been running it for a number of years and helped many founders take an idea, an early stage idea, through to launch and then move on to their first round of funding. So I'm quite across what it means to get founders investor ready. We work with a lot of VCs, angels, syndicates, and so yeah, we're working very closely with the investment community.
Do's and don'ts, sure. I think by now I mean, as a founder, you should know all the materials you have to have ready, meaning the deck, some sort of financial model which articulate, more of your assumptions behind your products or services. That model is more to have an informed or an intelligible conversation with potential investors. But really, I mean, it's more in the mental and intellectual readiness and preparation. It's ideal when you raise, when you don't need to raise. So having conversations before you're desperate for cash, and so engage with VCs early, but not too early. I mean, do have a conviction, for your service or for the market you want to tackle. Ideally, it's a market you actually want to build. It's not an existing market. That would be a bit more exciting conversations for potential VC. And really use business angels as strong signals for your fundraise, and also for potential introductions. Some angels, they do have good relationships with some VCs. So if an angel in a specific vertical or industry or sector that you want to tackle, if they invested in this already, well, they most likely have some knowledge, very valuable knowledge of the industry, and some connections with it they co-invested with already. I think you need to demonstrate some sort of assurance, some sort of inevitability, without being too arrogant. You need to speak with confidence with the product you want to build, the services you want to sell, but not being too close to feedback. So there's a balance. But I mean, having all your materials ready, engaging with the right people, and having smart conversations, and demonstrates a drive rather than data or metrics, which are not there anyway. I think that would be my 2 cents on the fundraise, please.
Yeah, in terms of do's, Look, we speak with VCs all the time, and their origination teams are tasked with building long-term relationships with companies. They're a lot more risk averse these days, so it can take a while to build those relationships up. And what that means is that companies should be, or founders should be, willing to keep VCs and angel investors in the loop, right? Have interesting stories to tell them, keep them on board with your narrative, update them often, and that can pay off over time. I would say just don't assume that everyone understands your market as well as you do, right? The number of companies that I've seen launching into pitches where actually their real kind of core mission statement isn't defined, and immediately half the people in the room just switch off. I think like it's incredibly important not to just dive into the numbers, but actually to build a bit of a narrative around what it is you're doing and why you're succeeding at it. Maybe why you've got that secret sauce or that USP within your founding team and within your company. Yeah, that's it from me.
I think I was next, Anton. Is that correct? I'll go anyway. Hi, founders. Look, my advice as to do is to make sure you have a well-defined business model. It might sound quite basic, but it's amazing how many times we hear founders pitch and they don't really understand how the business is going to successfully make money. And a lot of times the business model is very complicated and hard to wrap your mind around. So make it simple. It should be simple at this early stage. In terms of don't, again, just looking back to hearing the pitches that I listened to, hearing founders ask for money, and then when you request some extra information, for example, and again, my caveat is I'm dealing with pre-seed founders, so founders that might say, well, I'm looking for my ask is 500K. Okay, what's that 500K? What are you going to spend it on? And you get a lot of approximates. Oh, it's about 100K on tech, and 100K on a hire, a couple of key hires, and it just sounds so not thought out, and it really puts investors off. I work with enough investors to hear them constantly whinge about this. You should be doing your due diligence and actually sitting down and working. If you haven't sat down with the tech company, get them to give you a proposal so it's a very accurate proposal. It's not around about 100K, because that puts investors off all the time. And also the runway, how long is it going to last and what are you going to achieve? So what are the key milestones you'll achieve? For example, if we get this funding, it'll enable us to onboard 6 B2B clients which will generate this income, etc., etc. That's what we want to hear. So not just, it's always easy to ask for the money, but what will you achieve? How long will it last? And make sure that this expenditure is as accurate as possible, and it's not just pie in the sky stuff, which we see a lot.
You guys are an absolute goldmine. Thank you very much. That was amazing. Right, Jim. Quick reminder to those of you on the live streams and those of you that have just tuned in, either here or on the live streams. This is Startup Fundraising Q&A 145. We're here to help founders with whatever questions you may have on your fundraising journey today. Those questions can be literally on anything to do with fundraising, whether it's investor outreach, pitch decks, data rooms, valuations, equity, due diligence, grants, angel investors, VC, corporate VC, crowdfunding, exits, and anything and everything else in between, or beyond for that matter. There literally are no wrong questions, and there's no need to be shy. We are going to need to cut it short today, so not until 1 p.m., which is our usual one, but we'll probably be here for the next half an hour or so. And just a reminder to those of you on the live streams, unfortunately, we are unable to monitor your questions now live. So there's no point in messaging or commenting because unfortunately, I just can't monitor them. So if you do want to ask our amazing panelists anything on fundraising, you'll have to join us here on Microsoft Teams. The quickest way to do that, it's via our website, startuptoscaleup.club. Again, startuptoscaleup.club. You go there, find today's session, which is Startup Fundraising Q&A 145. You click join. It's a quick registration that gets you a link to your email. And through that link, you can join us here. It's audio only, which means you can join from any device or platform, wherever you are, basically. Once you're here, all you have to do is just drop your question in the chat. We'll then give you the mic and you can ask the panelists. It's audio only, which means it's also flexible as well for you. But if you've got questions that are not on fundraising, please save them for the other events we run. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of each month is UK Startup Law, and third Friday of each month is UK Startup Finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. And whilst you're there, you may also want to join our WhatsApp community. There's a WhatsApp icon at top and bottom of the site where you can join some groups of founders, investors, and operators. And as far as the sessions are concerned, we've got sessions there, the events up to the end of July. You can RSVP to any of them there. And now we will quickly go through some questions. I've put a question in the chat so that the panelists here can also read it, but I'll read it out loud for the live streams. This is a eco-friendly packaging solutions for retail in Manchester at pre-seed. Our eco-friendly packaging startup was unable to close our pre-seed round and now needs a backup plan. Would bootstrapping through personal savings or limited revenue-based financing be effective to maintain basic operations, or could this raise concerns for future investors? Could we focus on minimal viable product sales or small pilot projects to generate initial traction? Are there any UK-based grants programs for sustainable packaging we should consider whilst regrouping for another pre-seed round? Give you my quick 2 pence. If you can, don't go and ask for money. Borrow it or sell shares of your company. But if you can't, then you're better off doing that than failing. With that in mind, we are going to start this with, let's say, Kweku, then Richard, then Archie, and then Fabio. Let's take a minute or about a minute each, please, team. So Kweku, Richard, Archie, and Fabio, please.
Great, yeah. So thanks for this question. Really interesting one. So the first thing I would say is don't be shy of bootstrapping. It sounds like you're on the verge of some really interesting initial sales because you're looking at revenue-based financing. So you've got some kind of traction there. And we're seeing a lot more companies that are going down the bootstrapping route to begin with, and investors actually seeing that as quite a positive in this more volatile market, right? So being able to do that from the off, really, really useful. I'll go into the grant side of things because I'm sure the others can cover off more on the funding side. So in terms of grant funding, yes, there's actually been a £60 million funding round from 2019 through to 2025 with UKRI that's focusing specifically on sustainable and eco-friendly packaging. Now, most of those projects are coming to a close in 2025, but what that does mean is that you've got a few things going on. One, the project, or the fund rather, is likely to repeat in the coming months. There may be last elements of that funding that are released via Innovate UK over the rest of the course of 2025. There's also going to be a number of case studies that have gone through the fund that you could look at, and I can send a link to those companies in the chat, because £3.7 million of that £60 million fund was invested in the Northwest. So you should have some local case studies of companies that have been grant funded, probably had some match funding from investors as well, and that could be a really nice place to start your search for investors too. I think that's all of my time, but I hope that was useful.
Hi. So my comments are very similar to Warren on the bootstrapping. You know, I'm always in for founders who can bootstrap. You'll hear
it's Kweku. Sorry, Richard. Just to clarify, it was Kweku, not Warren.
Oh, it was Kweku. I beg your pardon. I was looking at the wrong icon. So I agree on. I agree on the bootstrapping anyway. You know, you'll hear a comment saying, you know, what skin in the game have you got? And investors do, I concur, they do like to hear or hear that the founders themselves have put in some of their own money. It's part of and even a family round is another good, a friends and family round you might want to consider. So look, just to pull all that together, bootstrap, excellent. You know, I don't know your personal situation, so I can't comment on that. But if you've got the ability to do so, then I would absolutely go for it. I don't think it does the opposite to maybe what you're thinking. It doesn't put investors off. I haven't met one yet who says, why have you bootstrapped? Then I would consider a family and friend round, because this is the next logical step. You know, if you can get, again, I don't know your personal situation with family and friends, but if you can get somewhere in the vicinity of 20, 30, 40, up to say maybe 50 grand together, this might be something that you might like to consider, because that also could help you push along. Again, you know, this is a really high level. I would need to sit down with you to sort of understand where you're at with your product, where you're at with your development and this sort of thing. Without knowing that, consider family, friends. Also consider maybe crowdfunding. This is something that, you know, you're talking about eco-friendly packaging solutions. Anything in that eco space generally, I'm going to say, works well with crowdfunding. And again, you know, this, if it's a consumable product, because I don't know, we don't have the information. If it is in the consumer's eyes, then this could be a really good solution for you as well. Always work on minimum viable product as far as I'm concerned. So again, without knowing what you've done, what have you sold, what are your customers telling you about the product, you know, unless you feel you've actually got the fit, then it's now let's scale. That's what we would look to doing. But if you're, as founders, feeling like you still might not quite have the fit right, and you're still fine-tuning your product, then this is a sensible path. You know, I always say to founders, I say to a lot of founders rather, I think you're too early for funding. You're still fine-tuning product, you're still getting feedback. So without knowing that area of your business, you know, it could be quite a good thing for you to go down this bootstrapping path, then start thinking about family, friend round, and so on.
Yeah, just to reiterate, bootstrapping, very important. Shows you've got skin in the game, as everyone said so far. In terms of grants, I'm not best placed to say, but I think along with bootstrapping, you know, reducing your own wage and ultimately finding income from elsewhere with a second job. Although naturally that detracts you know your time from the main goal. It's whatever can keep you going is the most important thing, and that shows investors' dedication to the company that you're so passionate about. I'd say angel networks and syndicates are important and can move quite quickly as well at times. Try and look at a regional syndicate of high net worth. Naturally, it can be quite hard to sort of get involved with them, but you know, LinkedIn is your friend here, so try and use that. And similarly, crowdfunding, as the previous gentleman said. I would also encourage and finally try and put creative ideas in front of VCs. My view is that VCs, despite portraying themselves as creative individuals, they're probably the most uncreative part of finance as a whole. And so you've got to show them, you know, there's safe notes, convertible notes, other ways of financing that they can be involved that would be favorable to them in your, you know, your current position, the ways they can really, you know, find a fruitful solution to this. Finally, business sounds really interesting, but I would be curious to know why the pre-seed round was unable to close in the first place, and whether there'd be some learning lessons from that. Although you probably don't have a huge amount of time to get the funding in and really go back to square one. But all right, I'll pass on to the next person.
What say you, Mr. Simple VC? Fabio?
Yeah, I agree with the general sentiment. I think, I mean, considering the you know, the current and the late fundraising environment, it's kind of tough. So bootstrapping is not probably not a weakness. It's actually a flex in 2025, and VC investors will actually respect that. I think you need to go tactical. If you haven't raised, maybe you were too early, or you need to actually prove something. A key assumption. So don't bet the farm on, and don't burn all your savings. Don't do that by all means. Borrowing, I'm not too sure. It might be too early, but be surgical on your spending. Don't spend on brands. As literally go find around Manchester or in Manchester a shop, a chain, which align the most with the values you want to communicate. Offer pilots 30 days. Build something. Demonstrate. Prove a key assumption. Just so that when you go back to having conversations with angels, angels who could be in that market, by the way. They could be, CEOs of a chain in Manchester or in London, or they could be the general partners at a VC firm that actually invested in that sector. So you engage the person first and say, look, we actually believe in this. We're going to prove this in the next 20 days or 3 months. This is what you're going to take to build an MVP. This is what we're going to prove. And you prove it, you go back to the table, and you don't look like a potential. You look like, it's already happened. And that's the flex. I think you need to show motion. I think investors penalize. I mean, they won't penalize you because you're bootstrapping or you're burning your savings, but they will penalize inertia and stagnation. So if you show motion, if you demonstrate a key assumption, say, look, we are going to do this, and then go back, do it, go back to them, have this conversation. It's different. I mean, you're reframing the conversation, and I think that's the flex these days.
Thank you very much. Before I also add something, Kweku, if you want to think of 2 tips you haven't mentioned earlier to this person in terms of applying for the grant that you said, please think of that whilst I give my quick 2 pence. Again, I'll repeat sort of what I said earlier. Flaunt it if you've got it. If you can bootstrap, don't do anything else. But if you can't and you need money, here's a really, really clever trick that I've recently seen people use. Not a lot of founders think about it. If you can get money from friends, family, and fools, as well as some angels and perhaps angel syndicates, do that. And then once you have the commitment from them, or in the meantime, start talking to a half decent crowdfunding company, because you already have this committed. And once the crowdfunding starts, you don't need to do anything else. And guess what? If you have, I don't know, 50% or more of what you want to raise committed from literally the moment you go live, and that shows up on any platform, I guarantee you will go above most other people, because not many people manage to do that. So that's something that you can really work on. And Kweku, just before we go on to the next question, 2 quick tips, if you may, how this person, there's always tricks to the trade, and I know you don't want to reveal all of your tricks, but maybe a couple quick ones that may help this person, apart from going to somebody like yourself, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
It always works best.
That's fine. So I'm actually going to give you 3. The first one is really, really simple. Be specific. So go for a grant fund that really matches your business very, very well. If you're having to squint at it to think whether you should apply or not, then it's probably not the right grant for you. Remember, the competition is high, so don't try and fudge it. Secondly, remember that certainly Innovate UK, but most other funders back projects, not businesses. So it's not about just pitching your entire business and saying how fantastic you are. It's about looking at a specific project, what the parameters of that project are, the timescales, the deliverables by the end of the project, the IP that you're going to generate, and making sure that that meets the criteria. And then the final one, I would say, possibly a little bit counterintuitive, but start small. Don't make the first grant that you go for a £4 million grant that goes across both the UK and European Union. The chances are that you don't have the skill set yet or the track record with the funding bodies to achieve that grant against really, really stiff competition. Go for something small. build up a transactional history, perhaps with grants that are under £200,000, but still meaningful to your business. And then once you've won one or two of those, you'll be in a really, really strong position to go for one of the more game-changing grants for the business. Hope that's useful.
Brilliant. And Kweku, yourselves and other half-decent grant application companies, do you ask for a fee up front, or do you work on commission, i.e. percentages? How does that work in general?
Yeah, sure. So there's definitely all sorts of ranges of companies that are out there. There aren't so many reputable providers that will do everything on success fee basis, because usually a strong grant writer will invest a lot of time and energy into your application and work alongside you for maybe 4 to 6 weeks. We obviously have academics and sector specific technical experts that we apply to each of our grant applications. Usually there's a range of different services that you can go for. That could be everything from a light touch review service, where we're kind of supporting you on a grant that an application you've already written, all the way through to hand holding you through an entire multi-party grant writing process. But what I would say, and this might be useful for some of the companies on the call, we actually have a service that is a grant matching tool. That's a really, really cheap to buy. That's £99 to make use of, and you get a full report of all the grants that match you, that are current live right now, and we run through that with one of our academics in the field. So a grant writing expert, usually a sector-specific expert or academic,
That sounds
that
good.
runs you through that report. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll now go on to the next question. If anybody else wants to ask a question, please remember, if you're on the live streams, we can't monitor your questions there live. So you have to be here with us on the live audio. It's audio only, by the way, so no need to spend time in front of the mirror to fix your hair. Simply go to our website, startuptoscaleup.club, find today's session, which is Startup Fundraising Q&A 145. Click join. Quick registration gets you a link to your email. Through that link, you can join us here on Microsoft Teams. Then you drop your question in the chat. I'll give you the mic and you ask our 4 amazing panelists, which is a mixture, as you can see, or hear rather, of investors, grant people, fundraising specialists, and so on. So let's now move on to the next question. Again, we're helping founders today with fundraising questions. This is from a B2B SaaS for energy management in Birmingham. They're bootstrapped and they're going for seed. Our energy management SaaS is negotiating a seed round with angels requesting a ×2, so 2x liquidation preference. How common is this in the UK for SaaS companies? And what negotiation tactics can we employ to reduce this preference or mitigate its impact on founder returns? Would reducing preference to 1x but offering anti-dilution clauses be a feasible compromise? You definitely want to join our Startup Legal Q&A, which is next week, I think. But in the meantime, maybe we can start with Richard, Archie, Fabio, and then Kweku, please. Let's keep it to a minute each, please, fellas.
I might pass to my colleagues, Anton, on this one, because it's very much a
That's
legal
cool.
SOTS type question, which I don't feel
It is.
I should answer.
No, that is totally cool, buddy. And yes, everybody, it is way better to pass on a question than just try and make it up. Because if we just want to make up, trust me, they can go to ChatGPT, which is much better at making up shit. So please feel free to pass it on. Archie, Fabio, and then Kweku, please.
Yeah, similarly, I'm probably not best placed to answer this, but from my side, I would say I haven't seen this before. Usually a 1 times is more normal. I would say in the UK it's probably less aggressive. And if it is a 2 times preference for liquidation, it's usually later stage. And so it doesn't necessarily promote or help the founders, but anything more I can't add. So please, anyone else. No, that's all from me.
Is it Anton? Is it me, Kweku? I'll dive in then. So yeah.
Sorry, buddy, me and my fat thumbs. It was Fabio, but that's okay. You can go and then Fabio.
Sure. So look, like the others, I'm not a lawyer, so I won't go too much into this. But I will say is this: liquidation preferences like this at seed stage could really hamstring you moving forward. You don't want a load of really complicated and sticky terms that you're having to renegotiate when you're bringing on board your first institutional investors. So I would be very careful. If the angel is like keen on some kind of preferential terms, then push them and see whether they can offer any other kinds of value to the business. If you're not just going to negotiate hard on equity for those terms, can they do something like KPI vested share options? So that's where you write into the equity clauses for the angel, whether they need to perhaps deliver a client to you or access to the network, or maybe bringing on board other angels to help with the fundraising round. Final point is, if you're looking at an established angel network, check the Innovate UK website that they are not on the IPP certified investors list. If they are, then Innovate UK may be able to match fund whatever investment you do get from the angels through the investor partnership program. So definitely worth checking those. That's all from me.
Can roll. Fabio.
Yeah, definitely. A liquidation pref sometimes is a red flag. It's definitely not UK norm. And the question is actually, do they want to negotiate or mitigate that that clause, or do they want to walk from this negotiation? A liquidation pref is very much a mirror of the investor's intention and intent. Are they here to protect themselves and to get paid first, or are they actually aligned with the founders? So that's really a question. And without going to the legals of it all, because of course we're not lawyers, but I think seed legals, or there is even still online passion capital term sheets in plain English somewhere that can be downloadable, and that those terms plain and very vanilla, very friendly, both for the founders and the investor, are available, and then they should be referred to.
Thank you very much. For more expert opinions, you definitely want to join us next Friday for our Startup Legals Q&A. However, this is what I would do. Unless there's a risk of my company not surviving, I would tell them where to go and stick 2 fingers up in the air. If this means whether, if I get this funding, I have a chance to fight. If I don't, this company fails, then I would do anything it takes to save my business. That's my view on this. Right, we now move on to the next question. Wearable health tech for chronic conditions near London, pre-seed stage. Our wearable health devices focus on chronic condition management, and we're seeking NHS SBRI, Jesus Christ, whatever that means, SBRI grants for pilot funding. What are the key compliance and trial requirements to secure NHS-related funding? And should we partner with NHS Trust for testing to strengthen our application? Are there specific metrics on patient impact or device efficacy? I'm assuming efficiency. The NHS evaluators prioritize in the grant review process. If you can get to partner with NHS Trust, you might have just won the lottery. That is quite tough then. On this one, if you don't mind, we'll start with Kweku again, and then we'll go to Fabio, then Archie, and then Richard. Let's keep it at a minute each, please, fellas.
Thanks, Anton. Okay, look, really
Can
quick.
you explain what NHS SBRI is also, please, Kweku?
Yeah, okay. So what I was actually going to say is the best way for me to do this is to put this person in touch with one of our academics who works on our NHS SBRI grants. It's quite a niche
Reach
grant,
out to Kweku.
as you can see there. Yes, you can basically reach out to me, and I'll put you in touch with one of our academics that works on these grants. The NHS Trust partnerships are incredibly difficult to secure. Usually they come through one of the founding members of the applicant companies. We've got a number of winners of these grants over the past few years, and definitely got some useful insights to share on this, but I'm not the person who knows these inside out. So these questions, let's get them in front of the right person. Thanks.
And anything quickly that might help them with this, at least where they should start looking?
To be honest, it depends on the SBRI grant that they're talking about. So SBRI is quite a broad-ranging fund, and there are a number of different challenges that they'll be trying to meet within them. So it could be that they're based on digital health. It could be workforce automation within the NHS. It could be clinical trials. There's so many different brackets that I wouldn't want to comment. Yeah.
I hear. Thank you very much. All right. If anybody else wants to add anything, Fabio, Richard, and Archie. If not, we can then move on to the next question. Fabio?
Definitely appoint a clinical doctor advisor to this, and then make sure they went through the process before, and they already helped securing NHS trust trial and letter of support. I mean, that is gold, definitely, in that industry.
Anton, I wouldn't mind chiming in here if that's all right.
Oh yeah, please do. That's why I said it in that order. Either say pass or chime in, please, lads.
Okay. So look, we work with a lot of health tech founders, and I don't see this being any different. You know, I'd ask you the question again. We have limited information from the question here. What chronic condition are you talking about? Why this product? What's it doing? How does the current health system solve this problem today? Why is this better? Because I guess as a founder, we'd want to see trials. And the NHS is, whether you go through their grants or other government grants, because there's innovation grants, and I'll leave that up to the grant specialists in the panel here. But there's more than just the NHS grants that you could work with. A couple of our founders recently got innovation grants. So I know this is a funding discussion, but I would sort of steer it to the more of the problem product placement discussion, because there's got to be a reason why the NHS would want to adopt this. I'm assuming it's the next best thing for solving whatever the chronic condition is. So that's where I would lead you down a path, because a lot of investors are interested in health tech founders. I have a great network with AIN. They're always asking me for health tech founders and sending them pitch decks on that. So whilst I appreciate your focus is on the NHS grant, and what are the requirements? I mean, the requirements are obvious in terms for any founder going through any grant, not just that one. And that is, pointing you back to, why is this a better solution for monitoring this chronic condition? So I would assume that you've done your own trials before it even went to the NHS, and there's no mention of that. So that is certainly, if you haven't done so, that is definitely, that proof in the pudding's required. And then whether this then starts opening up the discussion of the business model. Is this something you're expecting the NHS to adopt, or is it going through the private health sector? I mean, there's a whole world of a discussion in terms of that and your business model. But there's hopefully some food for thought there for you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Archie, and then Fabio.
Nothing to add on my side. I'm experienced in the climate tech and agri-food space and have no experience in healthcare, so I'll pass on, please.
Monsieur Lafranca.
Sorry, is that for the healthcare question? I think I answered already.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry, bud. All right.
Yeah.
No worries. Thank you. Sorry, I'm losing my marbles, aren't I? Okay. All right. Let's go to the last question for today. Prop tech founder in London. She's at seed stage, ex-real estate agent, so ex-estate agent. Our platform streamlines the rental process for landlords and tenants. However, investors are asking for proof of recurring revenue before committing. How do I build a credible forecast that shows we can scale quickly, even if they're still early in acquiring users? Okay, so they're asking for recurring revenue, and you're asking, how do you build a forecast? Forget everything else, just go and get some clients out there. All right, let's start with Archie, Richard, and then Kweku, please.
From my side, it's bringing them into the narrative. It's not necessarily about creating a credible forecast, because that's naturally they'll be au fait with seeing dozens, of hockey stick forecasts every week, and it's about getting them to understand what levers are going to be pulled, and what will result in recurring revenue from X, Y, or Z. So again, going back right to the beginning of what everyone said at the start, build those relationships, ask for advice, even bring in perhaps an advisor, an angel, a high net worth who likes to get involved in startups, maybe even put a ticket in. But at first, the conversation is about bringing them in as, I don't know, doing some interim CFO roles, or being a strategic advisor. So that's my small bit of advice.
Definitely concur with Archie's comment about a forecast, because you don't want to put something down for the sake of it. Investors, and when we work with founders to do their forecasts, a lot of them get anxiety over, oh, how do we know how accurate is it? You've got to pull in everything that you have done up until that point in terms of research and interviews with your customers, and taking everything into an account to have the best guess. That's what we call it, the best guess, because it is still a guess to some degree. So make it as credible as you can by backing it up with that research and those discussions with your customers, because this should be nothing else but that. When you're talking to your customers, if they're thinking, look, I don't want to be negative here, we see a ton of these prop techs come through our accelerator, and we work with some founders who we believe do a really good job with it, and others who are doing a bit more of a me too product. So that's what I would question. I'm going to be a little bit facetious here. It streamlines rental processes for landlords and tenants. The last time, it's been a long time since I rented a property, but even back then it wasn't a problem. I just have a direct debit to my agent, and I don't know whether it's about debt collection or when there's a problem, so an agent can. So again, I don't have the problem here to really understand what you're doing, but it doesn't sound groundbreaking to me, to be really frank with you. So if it is groundbreaking, and I apologize because I don't have the info, then your customers should be telling you. That's the point here. They should be saying, look, this is the next best thing since sliced bread. We can't live without it, so we would use it. And repeat that, and that should give you, that feedback should give you some indication to give what you're calling a credible forecast. That's what I'd be doing. It'd all be surrounding the conversations with the customers.
Yes, Kweku. Or is it Fabio? Sorry, Fabio.
Okay.
Sorry, Fabio.
Oh, sorry, my connection is lagging a little bit. I wasn't sure if it was me or anyway. I think I'll be quick. I'm not really sure how to answer that question. I think, yeah, investors do ask for recurring revenue. I mean, that's sort of a generic question. I think if you're having a better, I mean, if you're having a better conversation with an investor who understands a little bit better what's behind the MR, really what they want to understand is the assumptions and the actual metrics or the key levers in the financial model that you can control or hope for. So recurring revenue is not so much about price, it's really about the habits and what you actually dominate in the market. So are you an app, are you a product for the landlords or for the tenants? How are you making your app inevitable? Is it for price? And well, that can drive the conversation around the recurring revenue, but or is it about the absolute necessity for either part of the marketplace? to actually use your service. And I think in that sense, retention in month one, but more so in month two, month three is more important than top line recurring revenue. If that makes sense. So I think in your model you will have a better conversation with a better investor about unit level economics, drilling down, having a granular understanding of what drives the business, rather than, okay, what's just your MR, and then the decision is made just on that. I think that's probably a better, more informed conversation to have.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Kweku. And if the others want to start thinking of some quick parting words, we'd really appreciate that. Kweku.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, in terms of the credible forecast, I just think, be sure that you've thought through all of the ramifications of the routes to market that you're looking at. So if you're talking about face-to-face sales, include the time to train up your salespeople and include commission payments, for example, maybe even recruitment costs. If you're going digitally to the market and you're looking at digital ad spend, include real costings for your pay-per-clicks, and also include some of the results of your limited trials that you've done. Perhaps if you're going via a partner model, you want to be talking about which partners, how have the early conversations gone, and then also how many customers can you get access to through each one of those partners. And if you're adding another point in the sales cycle, another link in that chain, then is that going to increase the length of your sales cycle, and that's going to have to affect your cash forecast as well. I'll also say, just on the government funding front for a second, for a less stringent requirement for ARR that a lot of investors are looking for, have a look at the Innovations Loans Scheme. It's an evergreen fund, so it's constantly open at the moment, and that funds projects from £200,000 up to 2 million, and you only have to have early traction to apply for that. So worth having a look at. That's all from me.
Well, thank you very much to you all, gentlemen. Can we have some quick parting words, please? I guess we'll start in the same order we joined. So Archie, Fabio, Kweku, and then Richard, please.
From my side, I'd say work hard. Obviously, everyone's going to say that, but work hard, but at the same time, ensure that you do take some time off. I can't remember the Harry Stebbing. It says, on LinkedIn, you've got to be working 24 hours a day, pretty much 7 days a week. I do disagree with that. Take some time off and you'll find your efficiencies go up. Speak to everyone, collaborate, and start the fundraising process far earlier than you think. It's a continuous thing that never stops. Even if you become create successful companies, your role as CEO will end up just being perpetual fundraising. And then finally, I would say ensure, even when others are not necessarily that polite in their declines for participating in your fundraising, ensure that you are always polite back. You never know where that conversation will go, and whether you should keep that dialogue going for future rounds. So best of luck, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah, fundraising is really tough. It's really tough, and you're not just raising capital; you're raising belief, and that's what you are selling. Pretty much, you're selling belief in yourself. You're selling your conviction, and the best investors, they follow investors who bet everything already, not just money, but also their belief, their conviction. And that's infectious. You want to show inevitability, and that's what investors back. So, of course, you have to have your materials ready, but keep your story sharp. And it's a soft, it's a delicate balance between being inevitable, having the utmost conviction, and still being flexible and flexible for feedback.
I would just say, don't be afraid of bootstrapping for a little while longer at the moment, right? Investment rounds do take longer, and they're really, really tough. It's it's actually something to be proud of. I've seen more and more founders, you know, stepping up to the pitching sessions and saying, yeah, we're bootstrapping. We're really, really proud of that. I think it is exactly the right furnace to build very, very strong steel in for later rounds of investment. And I think investors are really starting to clock onto the fact that bootstrap companies have got some real kind of staying power. So be proud of that fact and hang in there until the first investment round.
Richard.
Parting words, I would say make sure your roadmap is balanced, and that means it's believable, it's accurate, it's achievable, it's still ambitious, but it's all those other things. What you will achieve with those funds from your investors or investor.
Well, thank you very much to all four of you. Thank you to all those that tuned in, especially here on Microsoft Teams. As for the rest of you that tuned in via the live streams, next time, please join us here live on Microsoft Teams. It's audio only. Today, we help founders with fundraising questions, but we do 6 regular sessions. Monday's talent, Tuesday's product and tech, Wednesday's growth, Thursday's fundraising, second Friday of the month is UK startup law, third Friday of the month is UK startup finances. They're all from 12 to 1 p.m. UK time. You can RSVP to any of them via our site, startup2scaleup.club. And when you're there, you may also want to join our WhatsApp community. We've got groups of founders, investors, and operators. There's a WhatsApp icon at the top and bottom of our site. As far as my parting words are concerned, just remember the startup journey can be both challenging and also quite exciting. So try to have some fun and be kind to yourself and everyone else. After all, this life is short, and I can't help but think about that as I'm rushing to go to a funeral now. Have some priorities in life. Hopefully we'll see you on Monday for Startup Talent. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon and a brilliant weekend, and God bless you all. Bye-bye for now.